can't see you, Barbara.
You're okay. You're okay.
You're on there, Barbara.
I'm gonna sip some more coffee. Well, I did, Amy invited me because she's learned a little bit about what I do through our group that we have, and she asked if I would do this too, and I said, of course I would, but I do want to say I don't think this is the first and last time. I think that what I want to make sure you all know that as you progress as a church into serving what we call the least of us in any way, and if I can be of any help with the massive amount of experience I've had, I'd be glad to come back and help you talk through specifics if you'd like. But for today, we're going to talk about the homeless population of our county, which I don't know about you, but at times seems very odd because we are such an affluent county. But that tells you something right there. So I want you to think about that. So let me begin with giving you an overview of the demographics of the population of the homeless in our county. And then I'll stop and see what maybe specific things you would like to talk about, okay? So here are some surprises that you'll find. 85% of the homeless that use homeless services in Napa County are native Napa County folks. And specifically in the city of Napa, it's always a challenge, the fact that they went to the elementary schools, they went to the high school, they grew up there. And if you've ever left your hometown, has anybody left home?
Yes.
Okay. If you've left home, can you remember how difficult that was to uproot yourself from, hang on just a minute. Beta saw somebody working outside and thought that maybe she needed to go see there. Sorry, Beta, come here, honey. Come here. I know you're trying to just be such a good girl. So, 85% natives. So, I was always very offended when they called them transients because our homeless are not transients per se. They were raised in this valley. Now, there is 15% that are what I call, as affectionate as I can, refugees. Refugees from Lake County, refugees from Solano. And the challenge there is their counties do not provide anywhere near the homeless services that our Napa County does. So people who are trying to survive, what are they going to do? They're going to go where they can survive. So we do have some people migrating a bit because their local people don't have the services they need. Transients are people who, for lack of a better description, will jump on a bus or a train someplace and ride it to the end, and in fact, BART has that issue. People riding BART, and then the end station is where everybody ends up at night when they close down the system. But we don't have that in Napa County. You know that if you want to come to Napa County, you've got to come into Napa County purposefully. So I always want people to hold that intention with however you deal with the homeless in our county. So can I get a little interaction by saying, first of all, who has been aware, known, or helped a homeless person? Okay, so I'm sure your motivations were because you saw someone in need and attempted to try to help out with it. Some of the challenges in serving the homeless is not to give them what they want, but give them what they need. Because they're surviving, some of them will be very tedious about providing subsistence for themselves in some way or another. But it comes down to what layer of homeless do you reside in? And I call them, there's about 5 different layers of homelessness. At first I thought, oh, Dante's Rings of Hell, for sure, it seems like. And the further down, no, Beta? Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, well, she seems to want to be with you. So.
I smell like 5 dogs.
Okay, that's why, okay. And thank you, sorry. So the people at the top level are people that normally are very with it, very capable, have lots of skill sets, and maybe only became homeless almost temporarily because they're between jobs or they whatever, but they have the resiliency built into them to sort of bounce off like a rock can skip on a lake. They can bounce in and bounce out. That doesn't mean that they don't need help. They do, because if they don't get that help, just like that rock that skips on the water, they will end up going under. So, but with their resiliencies, they can do things like get to services in the county by bus, and they may even have their own transportation. So they have those skill sets, and you want to think about that, not to limit what you give them, but know that they're going to be wanting to be treated in a different way. They don't want often handouts; they want hand-ups. Okay. The other people, as you look down, fall further and further down in homelessness. We have people on the streets of Napa that have been out there 20 years. 20 years. But that's about it time-wise, because their life expectancy is maybe 20 years is cut off of their life expectancy by being on the streets. One of the things I gave them, and still do whenever there's a need, is I do the memorial services for them, because they don't necessarily aren't affiliated with the church, but they still have that need to be celebrated as life. And most importantly, the homeless community, which is now their family. Wendy was talking about in church this morning about the family of Grace Episcopal, and they have their own family of survival and fellowship and whatever. In fact, it's sometimes very cruel that when one of them passes, some relative from someplace out of state will come in and take care of everything, and they never even get to grieve their friend or their family member, as it was in the process. So they come, you can find within the homeless population a total list of demographics from the entire county of Napa. As I said, they all came from there. So you'll find folks that have PhDs, and you'll find folks that didn't graduate from high school. You'll find people that used to hold down massive jobs and then became unemployed because of the circumstances. I often think of back in, was it 2008, there was the big bank mess, right? And I saw people who had lived in apartments for 20 or 30 years end up out on the street because big real estate investors came in, bought of apartment buildings, and got rid of all those people. And that's what's happening in our county, because there's such a focus on us being a destination place that sometimes not that we don't need the business, not that the revenue is not wanted, it's just that sometimes the balance of taking care of our own and creating another lucrative environment isn't balanced properly. So the other most important thing that I always share with folks is we cannot sit in a place where we're going to think about what they need and therefore give it to them, and they're going to be just thrilled to get stuff from us. That's not how it works. They need to maintain their dignity and their independence. And so it's very important to ask them and figure out ways to find out what they need and provide that instead. So I always tell the story. There was a awesome little church, not over on this, not in Napa County, actually over in Sonoma County, who wanted to work with the homeless camp by them. And so I mentored the pastor a little bit about how he could go and begin to build a relationship between his church and the folks. And so they decided to do a really simple thing, which is to make sandwiches and bring them down to them and just offer, which was fine. And that went really, really well until one of the homeless people said, "No, thank you." And what can you think about why somebody would say no, thank you? If you want to unmute and talk, it's fine. Why would someone refuse a sandwich that they were being given? They're not hungry. They could not be hungry. They don't like it on the sandwich. Yeah, they may not like that kind of sandwich. And if you don't have a relationship, they don't necessarily trust who's giving them the sandwich. And some of them have too much pride to take a handout. If people don't believe, they think that that's weird, but it's not. It's the truth. So when this person was very polite and said, "No, thank you," the church woman, who, bless her heart, had spent 2 hours with the other deacons making sandwich, was offended. Offended because that person said no. And that's a human reaction, but to not understand that it's not about us being just so better that we're going to give these people something. It's about partnering and helping where the help is needed. And so one of the steps that's often missed is to truly figure out what is needed and not run off on the assumption that we know and act as if we're better. So those people, that's what they call, people say all the time, those people. And guess what? It's not those people, it's us, still us. We, therefore, for the grace of God, go us or someone we've known. And so we have to think about it collectively as all being God's children, instead of saying, well, I have more, I'm better, So I've been babbling for a bit. What are some of the hard questions you might have about the homeless that I can help with? Or what are you interested in or curious about? How do you start? How do you start was the question. I think if you are looking for a way as a church to begin, that you form a group of folks that have a common interest, and you decide what is it that you would like to do. And let me give you some examples. You can think about, you want to work with younger people, something that I always love to do, because I always want to feel as if maybe I'm stopping something that could happen later on if we work up here with them. Okay, so those are foster kids, juvenile probation kids, those kinds of things. Others think they just want to follow the Matthew 25 things. Let's feed them. Let's feed them. Let's clothe them. So the question is, as a church, what you really want to do is decide what is it you want to do, so that you don't overcompensate, you don't overextend yourself and end up not being able to really do your mission, and then everybody gets burnt out and disappointed, and then you want to pick something really, and then you want to invest your time and energy getting to know the agencies. And I know there are some up here in St. Helena, you sit next to one. Puertas Abiertas is right next door. Oh my goodness. You know, you connect with with someone that's already doing mission work, and you provide your specialty of who you are to them, and you partner with them. You don't try to go out and do it all yourself. You can't do that. You'll burn yourself out in 2 seconds. So you're going to find people who pay attention to the folks they're serving, who spend time building relationships with the people that they're serving, so that they can truly get to know what it is that folks really need at any moment in time. The other thing to do is let your church have their special moments. I always suggest to churches that they pick something to do during Advent and something to do during Lent. Those are perfect times of the year. It's not something you have to do every month, every week, whatever. That gets a burnout too. But let everybody participate. So another example is because of my connections in Napa with the nonprofit that does Meals on Wheels, Covenant decided to contribute to the bag lunches, the food bag for the seniors. So during Advent, the other year, people could donate. It cost $7 for one meal, and so people could donate what they could. They could buy one meal. They could support a senior all week, all month, whatever their capabilities were. And we just did that through Advent time, and then you have to. Of course, one of my jobs was to make sure that they were getting information back about who it was they were supporting, and how well they did in the campaign, and that. And then come Lent, we did the Voices Youth Center that supports foster youth and emancipating foster youth, the youth staff there. And there I realized that they don't get healthy foods that often. So I made sure we were dropping off apples and oranges and bananas, and the youth staff who runs the whole place sometimes get ignored because they're youth, the staff, and they're there all day crunching, and so I want to make sure that they had fun snacks, some of them not so good, just for fun, but yeah. So you see what I'm suggesting to do. So that's how you get started. You start with deciding and everybody buying in that this is what Grace will, if you're looking at Grace, this is what Grace wants to be known as. The church that, fill the blanket. Okay? And then gather in as many of the constituents that already support that population. What else can I answer? No one's asking me the hard ones yet. I haven't heard anything about mental health or addiction.
Right. Mental health, addiction.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so let me tell you, it exists. Of course, you know it exists not only in the homeless population, but we all know that. And sometimes we have trouble admitting that, and somehow because the homeless, there's a higher concentration in their numbers. So first of all, let me talk about addiction. I don't know sometimes what came first, the addiction or homelessness and addiction. Because if you've not ever struggled to find a place to sleep at night, where you're going to eat, where you're going to go to the bathroom, I don't totally know how the crushing situation it is to have to do that every day and every day and every day. And pretty soon, a lot of people anesthetize themselves in order to cope. So that's part of where the addiction comes from. However, to crawl back out of homelessness, you got to find a way to get through that. So some places concentrate specifically on helping addiction groups serve the homeless. Now, if you're serving the homeless, do you set up a center where you're at? That's a trick question. You know, people, like, look, again, you've got to think about their condition. They are not, they're mobile in the sense of what they have to do every day to survive. But to expect them to go to government buildings, Napa County government buildings are where? All the way down at the end of Napa. Even the homeless within Napa took a giant hit. So my history is I was the program director for all of the homeless services for Napa County for 7 years, one capacity or the other. And for them to try to get down to places like signing up for food stamps or meeting their caseworker, or how do you do that? You know, it wasn't hard to do that when the government agencies were within the city limits, but now you have to go all the way to almost to, Highway 29 down at the bottom. And so what they did, and I applaud them for, at least in the beginning when the county moved their services, they provided a shuttle from the homeless center down to the buildings, because people had to meet their drug and alcohol counselors, especially if they were on mandated to attend because of charges or whatever. So we have to think about, and I often said that to the county workers, you've got to get out of your cubicles and out to the people. That's how you meet. You have to meet the services where people are.
Excuse me.
Are you all familiar with Ole Health in general? Yeah. So Ole Health became an unbelievable organization because they began in a station wagon driving out to the vineyards to serve health needs of the wine and grape industry. And then that evolved to much more of a service of health insurance, as well as the owners of, eventually the owners, if you all may know this, the owners having to provide some housing for people too. So I saw you had your hand up. Yes.
Yes, forgive me. Hi, my name's Rebecca. Nice to meet you. And I enjoyed your sermon very much. So how do you get on a shuttle when you've got a shopping cart full of your trash bag life? You can't leave it anywhere. You can.
What they do, I'll tell you in general what they do, and it becomes very touchy. They form little secure pods of people. So-and-so watches my stuff, just like you do when you leave your purse to go to the bathroom during the theater. It's another way of looking at it. So you're absolutely right. All of their belongings are in those plastic bags or their shopping bags. And the real danger is, this happens over and over and over again. They decide a camp grows, and it becomes a little city. And then there's too many complaints, and the police department or somebody needs to clean it out. And I'm not saying that there's not negativity associated with the camps. Sure there are. But they leave them notices on their tents that says in 3 days. They used to not give notice at all. When I first started, they would just bulldoze their camps and their tents. That's like somebody coming in and taking your house down without telling you. It's like coming home one day and finding somebody has, destroyed your house and put a new freeway in. So what we try to do is protect them as much as possible. And the answer is housing. No doubt at all. The answer is housing. And there's an equation called housing first. And housing first was meant to take the chronic homeless and get them housed first in affordable housing. And it has worked around the country in different places. I talked to folks in Delaware, who the nonprofit that provides homeless services thought far enough ahead that in the 80s they bought a couple of apartment buildings. So they go out to the camps and say, you, tomorrow I want you to go to this address and report to apartment 215. And that's where you're going to live. That's how they can reach in and pick out the homeless and get them situated. Unfortunately, has anybody looked at the cost of rent lately? Yes. I moved to Napa in 1998. I couldn't afford my house now. I could never buy my house, despite the fact that I had a considerable amount of equity in my other house in Oakland, and the fact that I had worked for Pacific Bell for 30 years. It just like there's nothing. So we've got to find ways to provide residency for these homeless folks, but at the same time, the biggest challenge is once they've been homeless for a very long time, it's like being raised by wolves. You don't, it's another culture. You don't all of a sudden jump back into a culture, even if you were there before, and become an outstanding citizen. It takes a lot of time to build yourself back up to be a person. So I didn't talk about mental illness. Mental illness is a huge factor about homelessness. Yet at the same time, I've seen the miracles when somebody is taken in, gone on meds, supported, been able to live in a decent place, even if it's a residential mental health facility. They can become, it's a miracle to watch what happens, what the support, is needed. And my heart always feels for the young people because they're smaller in numbers, so they're not the big bang factor, and we don't spend as much time as we should. Okay, so I don't know if that. So I agree with you. You want to think about if you. Can I tell you an example of that same problem? Was that when you go to prison, you go to prison, not county jail, but prison. When you come out, you are mandated when you come out to meet, to go directly to a meeting within 48 hours to check in with the state probation people. Do you know where the U.S. state government and the U.S. government had that place for them to meet? It was in Santa Rosa. You know how many people were reoffended and put back into prison because they couldn't get from Napa, where they lived, and went back home to Santa Rosa. Now, what they did is that we offered a place in our big dining room for that meeting to take place with Napa residents, Napa County residents. So that was one fix that we were able to do. But it's people not thinking at all about what you're asking people to do and then punishing them when they can't do it. Yeah. So back to mental health, really, again, it's Napa County has really some really great mental health services. But again, for you all up here, this is one of the big challenges for Up Valley, right? Is all the big stuff is down there. Though there's lots of services that they've had little satellite places up here. So there's probably some satellite places that could be supported that would help residents of up North Valley. Okay, what else? Yes. Yes. Have to turn it on.
Sorry, yeah. I have two general questions. One is, do you sort of have a general count of how many homeless there are on average in Napa County?
I served 700 and on average of 715 a year.
Wow.
And everybody gets like, no. And I want to, can I just tell you, and you'll get me, I'm getting excited now. There's much more than 715. Now that meant anybody that came in and gathered themselves for a service, whether they actually stayed at the shelter or just came in for some showers and laundry at the day center, whatever it was. I had an opportunity, we had the family shelter, which it does not exist anymore. Another nonprofit took over homeless services, which is why I left direct servicing. I'll talk about that some other time, but I had a person from the county's Office of Education whose job it was to keep track of the homeless young people. This is like, elementary school or high school, and the foster youth. So she knew, she had a binder of every kid that were in that situation, and she directly made sure they were getting the support they needed for school. She was the liaison between the county services and their schools, their teachers, and their principals. She was a part-time principal in Yapta. So we talked a lot. And I was very, very interested on really how many homeless young people we had. And she gave me some data, because guess what the schools know? The schools know which kids are really homeless. He said, because they come to school every day in the same clothes, they come without their books, and their homework's not done, because how in the heck do you do your homework on the dashboard? And they're hungry, you're right. They can be very hungry. If they're not in a place like in my family shelter, if they were there, they were getting taken care of. So there's probably another 250 kids that aren't counted, because there's a lot of people in cars, RVs, and they learned how to stay away from the police department, especially on the streets of Napa, they will not only double up and triple up as families, but they also will sleep in a car on their friends or family's driveway or side yard or garage, just to not be hassled, because they don't have a place to live. And some of them find how to sleep behind the hotels, but many of the hotels have security people that are outside. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So my second question is, you mentioned, food stamps, supplemental nutrition assistance. How many of that group, let's look at the adult population, have been successful in qualifying either for SNAP or for SSI or SSDI?
I don't, that's one of the numbers I don't have, but I do know because of a fight I got into. Somebody from the county, this new caseworker who did signups for the CalFresh stuff, was mad because you have to come back a second time often. And so she couldn't understand it was the kids' fault. It was those kids' fault. These would be the kids graduating from foster care and stuff. It's their fault. They didn't come back for their second appointment. Oh my God. If you've had kids, trying to get them to stay on a schedule, it's hard. And so successful places like in Sonoma, the Voices place there had shared workers come to the center and do that instead of expecting kids to go. So I don't have the numbers, but you're absolutely right. There's a ton of them that miss out on food stamps, miss out on housing opportunities, miss out on staying clean and sober, because we aren't creating a space for them. And if you're a business person, you're going to take your products to the place that it's going to sell. So the demographics, you know exactly where to deliver the distribution center, but somehow our government sort of services don't think in that same way. they should be thinking like that, like they're selling a can of peas, right?
Yeah.
And they don't.
I mean, that's a
So that's
shame.
not about solution and finding,
It could be a lifeline to so many people, but
absolutely.
it's so incredibly difficult to secure those benefits. I mean, SNAP is pretty straightforward. Medicaid is fairly straightforward, but SSI or SSDI is next to impossible.
Exactly. And Queen of the Valley Hospital did do their outreach peoples began a special service, which is how to do a fast turnover of SSI applications, and they have been really pretty successful with that, not having to wait months and months. And of course, if you don't have an address, you can't be verified your identity. And there's just so many traps and holes and ditches that people step in around all this. So I'm glad you brought that concept up, because I believe that our ministry work can be, how do you walk with somebody? Not yank them around and tell them where to go, but how do you walk with them? How do you support them and be someone that they can, and to give them something that they can really count on? The other thing is sometimes we have to be, we can't wait. That woman I was talking to about the sandwiches, she wanted to plant a seed and then she wanted to see it blossom right there. She wanted all that stuff of satisfaction and goodwill to come back to her. And when it didn't, she was disappointed. But my point is, I don't even think that's our job. Our job is to meet the need, not sit around and just meet the need, continue to meet the need. And you're going to be like those grass spreader. You're going to be sending out seeds of hope and faith to a ton of people. Some of it will stick and grow, like the parables of the seeds, and some of them will blossom in the right place. And so you got to think in that terminology and thoughts too.
Mhm.
So yeah, being an advocate, even if it's one person, and you walk with that person, and then get another person and walk with that, and you'll get to a certain point, and you may not know what happened, but you'll know that you gave that person a chance. But the numbers are staggering.
It is staggering.
Staggering. And I'm disappointed in our county government not being able to have better relationships with Solano County and Lake County, because every time they do something, like there was a week where Solano, and by the way, talk about hard to get. If you know the lay of the land of Solano County, we see coming up 80, we see their west side of the county, right? Guess where all their county buildings are? Way over by the Budweiser plant. How do you get there as a homeless person? So they don't have the kind of services at all that they should be providing their own. And so where do people come when they want to survive? They're going to migrate, and just like we see on the news every day from country to country, refugees will go where their families can have food and maybe find a place. And what's really hard about that is those people, well, let me say this backwards. One of the biggest successes I had was nurturing and milking that relationship of that the people had grown up in Napa, because they cared about their community then. They had identity with their community. And so it wasn't hard for me to talk to them about being a good citizen. If they want to be part of this community, they need to be part of this community. But if you come over just from Solano County, you don't have that human connection. And so it's harder not having that relationship. But what do you think you have here in St. Helena area, homeless-wise or youth-wise, or what's your thoughts about what you have? Do you have a feel for what you have at all? Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good place to start, because they exist, they're here. The stronger people, unfortunately, deal towards tourism, there's a bigger chance they get shoot away. But in some kind of capacity. Actually, I don't want to pick on, I won't tell you another city in our county. When I first took over the shelter, the sheriff's department would pick those people up and drive them down to the shelter and dump them out in front of the shelter, so that their little city stayed pristine. And it wasn't Santa Elena, so we'll just tell you that part, okay? Okay, what else can I help you with? So I think we've already said that you start with thinking, what would the best focus for you to have? And if you don't know enough yet to make that decision, I can help you connect with certain agencies that would help you understand what may be happening in the north part of the county. And then maybe you could land on a feeding program or a clothing program or an advocate program with high school kids or foster kids or whatever it is you want. So, I'll be done. Great. Okay, so yeah, we're sort of, I could talk for 3 hours, guys. So let's stop to think about what next is. Amy, what do you think next is?
Well, I think you're right, Linda. I know there's a lot of folks in our congregation who care about this issue. Folks that aren't even here today. So I think, you know, we've sort of restructured our outreach. We have a long history of financial giving that I shared with you, and in recent years we've started to think about service and advocacy. And advocacy, we've talked about, starts with learning. So this is actually a first step today to learn more about what's going on in our community. You know, in St. Helena, we'll have one homeless person every 6 months that'll show up for a little while and then disappear. We also see, you know, people that I think are sort of passing through there, maybe in that top tier of homelessness. They're living out of their car. They stop by the church. They ask for, you know, some form of help. But we also have, I know one of the Adventist churches here in town is really connected to the homeless community in Napa, and I think it's called the Bowl. Is that right?
I'm not sure what they call it, yeah, but I know of it.
The place, yeah. So, you know, I think you're right, like partnering with people that are already doing the work and seeing how we can come alongside and both learn and be of service is definitely the way to go.
And, you know, think of the little part you can actually do and make it beautiful, instead of trying to recreate what's already going on out there and things you can't even do anyway, you know, because it's so big and huge. Yeah. And then you also open yourself up to what will start coming at you because you've opened the spirit up too. I guarantee you. And then you're better equipped, not only to say, oh, that's new, I wonder what that's about, and then you will find out about that, or oh, I can help so-and-so do that. We could do something for this period of time for them. So it could be a lot of little things. It could be one major thing, but most importantly, you have good-hearted people. Sometimes people writing checks is important, and that's, I don't want to ever say no on that, but frankly, I understand getting your hands dirty too. The joy of work can be wonderful for the soul, but you want to be putting your time and effort in that shit. So
I think, Linda, if there's one thing that you've said today that sticks out the most to me, maybe because it lines up with my theology and my thinking around this for a long time, but you know, to say it's not those people, it's not them, you know, it's us. And I think recognizing and starting from a place of our common humanity is absolutely fundamental. So I think that's where I would start and spend time with that, come at it from a position of humility and partnership and companionship. Because whatever we do, you know, I back, not to pick on the poor sandwich lady, but if that sandwich is shared in a spirit of compassion, if somebody's just willing to sit on the ground and say, "Hey, how's your day?" Just chat and just be a human being with another person, rather than coming at it with an attitude of either just sort of natural discomfort or even superiority. I think that will put people off. So
you and I can talk. I could provide, like, I don't know what the number would be. It would probably be like the top 5 things that on how to engage a different culture population that you think needs your help, but and the saddest part is that people walk in and like the cemetery, and she's I'm using her. It reminds me of my youngest brother, who is an alcoholic and totally sober, clean and sober for a long while. But he has said, please use me. Please use me in your sermons. Please use me. Use my name. Do whatever, because they recognize that they also can teach in indirect ways. So so we'll talk about when you get to certain stages of what's next to help you go over that bridge a little bit easier. But I think first is to change I think you're right, to just think about, we're not talking about those people, we're talking about people that are part of us, and how do we be inclusive with them in a way that's safe and dignified and all those things. But this humanity, we have to separate ourselves from things we don't understand or things that bother us or make us uncomfortable. It's just such a sad thing we do as humans. So breaking that is good. Next is to really zero in on what you like to do that everybody can really own, and then get a plan together and do it. And I'll help however you want me to help. That's my new, as I told you, that's my new ministry too, is helping other churches do what they need to do. So,
Linda, thank you so much for being here today. I'm sorry that I've had to enjoy it from afar, but I really have enjoyed having you be with us.
Can I just tell you, I had fun.
I'm so glad.
I have fun. Your folks were so hospitable. Of course, my main person here, entity here, she broke any ice that might have been there.
Of course.
She loved your people greatly today.
That's her job.
We'll probably come back and see a lot of Beta hair. Okay.
That little spot where I saw her little spot there on camera. So
that spot, but with everybody petting her.
So cute. So cute.
You'll see.
Will you say a prayer for us as we close out here?
Oh, absolutely. Right. You want me to do it now? Close now? With it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd love to. Oh, most gracious and loving God, aren't we just blessed to have you in our lives, and the opportunity to do your work is unbelievable, but we want to do it right. So help us and open our hearts and our minds to what we need to do. Hold grace in your loving arms as they try to step out into ventures that are your work in this world, in Christ's hands and feet. You know their hearts, you know everything about them, so please support them, support their longevity and their health and whatever, so that they may respond to you. And I think we already said thank you for letting them have fun. So that's where we want to be too. Okay, in your loving Son's name, who taught us almost everything we need to know, we are blessed. Amen. Okay, Amy, I won't see you Wednesday. Will you be tired?
I think that's the end of our quarantine, so I'll have to maybe call in or something. I'll have to figure that out. We're testing like every day, so
yeah. Well, test negative for 2 days before you come out.
Yeah.
Be safe. Just be safe in all of it.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Reverend Powers.
Everyone.
My pleasure. It is a joy. It truly is a joy. And I'll be back. On Sunday, it's only like 25 minutes here. So I'll be more than happy to zoom up here. Okay?
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, now I'll ask my
Thank
question.
you.
So I moved out of Napa County.
Yeah.
Over to Calvert County. We're getting a large influx of newer